I apologize in advance if my cat screams in the background.
Hey, I apologize in advance when my cat screamed in the background.
I'm gonna not apologize for screaming myself in the foreground.
Butterscotch shenanigans. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 54 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the web unclogger.
I'm Sam, and I shove pixels around with a broom.
I'm Carol, and I'm still figuring it out.
And today is July 5th, 2016. Warning, anything can happen on this show. There will be profanity and some other nonsense. So if you're a child, go away. Hey, Sam.
Hey, what's up?
What happened on Friday?
Well, you see, Seth, I got a scan. I was scanned by a team of...
By a pet?
By a pet. And
Aww.
I went to the hospital in the morning and had to get injected with a thing called contrast, which anybody who's had a CT scan, medical scan, will know what it does, but basically it makes you feel super warm when it goes into your body. But here's the weird thing.
That's because it's full of radiation.
Wait,
right?
backstory real quick for people who, if this is their first time listening.
Backstory, I had some cancer for like 2 years, and I was scheduled to get a PET scan last week. And the PET scan is what tells you if you still have it or not. And I've been clear since December, and so this was the next one where something could go wrong, basically, is the way I always view these. So they tend to be a bit stressful. So Friday I get to the hospital, and they put a pipe in my arm, otherwise known as an IV, if you're medical. And
arm pipe.
I got an arm pipe, and then lay me down in this big metal tube, which is also known as a CT scanner. And
A human pipe.
And as I'm laying in this human pipe, we got to elevate your arm pipe, and then they pipe in some contrast. And what contrast does is it makes it so that the image that the CT scan takes somehow, using black magic of the inside of your body, becomes more clear. It literally adds more contrast to the picture. That's like what it does. But they inject it in you as you're in the tube that's taking these pictures. And as a result of this, what happens is you can kind of feel it go in. And then usually for most people, what happens is it makes some part of them hot, like some part of their torso hot. So for me, it was my neck. So my throat suddenly felt like super warm, like I had a hot cocoa or something.
Like you just swigged a whiskey bottle?
Yeah, something. It was just like my throat was just super warm. And that was it for me. But I know from talking to a bunch of other people who've gone through cancer treatment that for most people, what happens after that is that the contrast basically gets immediately sent to your bladder by your body. Okay, because it's like, get the shit out of here. But the best part of that is that it still feels super warm the whole time. And so people end up feeling like they've peed their pants while they're sitting in the seat. Almost without fail. Almost people, I was actually very surprised. I was waiting for that to happen, but it never did. And I did not pee my pants, which is good.
But did you?
Good, I'm glad.
So you didn't get the warm crotch?
I didn't get warm crotch.
the hot crotch.
I only got hot neck. I didn't get warm crotch. So.
No warm crotch in your series of tubes.
Yeah, I mean,
Did it feel like you peed your neck?
Yeah, I was like, what? Why am I peeing in my neck? It was just it was an interesting situation. But yeah, so I got out of that, waited for the doctor, and then they gave me the all clear, which is super good because. As the rest of these butterscotches know, been a little anxious this past week, as you might be before going and finding out if you have cancer or not again. So,
well, I think more importantly, you were also super sick for unrelated reasons, which
For like
felt
2 months.
cancery
Yes.
for like 2 months.
yeah. So I'm finally feeling better, which is nice. Which actually, leads me to the next point, which is that we got to, me and my fiance got to host everybody here for a July 4th party yesterday. But
Which was awesome.
Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day, everybody. But
Yay.
here's the question. And actually, this actually revolves around the exact thing that we just said. And my fiance and I were having a debate about this because most people say, and I think it feels right to say, Happy 4th or Happy 4th of July, right? But I don't actually ever hear anybody say, aside from literally just now, because I put the text in here to remember this, Happy Independence Day.
So
Do you ever hear someone say that?
I try to exclusively say Happy Independence Day because Happy 4th of July means nothing. Like you're saying, it's like saying Happy 14th of September. Mm-hmm. And it's like, Or
True.
happy 25th of December, happy.
I wish people did that more, though.
Really?
You know? Yeah, like if you saw somebody, because that would also, it would
But
be a
isn't
nice...
that what they mean when they just say good morning? They're saying happy X of this
happy
month.
day. Happy this day.
Yeah, but if people framed it that way, then it would be much easier to remember what day it is.
That's true.
Well, yeah, but you're also losing the meaning of the holiday when you say that.
True. Well, you're losing the reminder as to why the hell you're blowing things up and eating birds.
Birds. Yeah,
Which I'm still not totally clear on that anyways, but...
So this is the only
'Cause
holiday,
America.
I think, where like July 4th and Independence Day are used really interchangeably. And I wonder if it's just because those things have become so synonymous.
Yeah.
That you can just say happy 4th and everyone's like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah, we kicked the Brits out, like in
Right.
their brains.
right.
Fuck their tea.
And
Fuck
then
their tea.
and the Brits just kicked themselves out
They did Brexit happen.
of the EU. They're really just...
Wait, they didn't actually yet, right? They just
They haven't
voted.
left yet.
They haven't left, but they
I'm not dead
decided
yet.
to.
Yeah.
And
Not dead
well,
yet.
yeah, that's actually what it seems like is happening now, because now I guess a whole bunch of people who voted to leave are like, wait a minute.
Half of England is like, I don't want to go on the
Yeah.
cart.
Yeah, so they're having some inner turbulence.
But we did learn that the British are just as racist as the Americans. So
Turns
that
out.
was
Yeah,
kind
so
of a
after-
relief. I don't know.
Is it a relief?
I
Well,
mean,
it was
in a
weird
way,
because after the Brexit exit,
it's just
British
British
exit.
That's
After
like
Brexit-
saying ATM machine.
Yeah,
after the
it
British
happened,
Brexit exit.
basically it was a weird thing where all these people who felt emboldened by the fact that the country just voted to leave the EU, who had probably voted for these reasons of immigration or whatever else. Basically, wasn't there like a huge spike in hate crimes? There's a bunch of like just outpouring
Well,
of
here's the
general
thing,
hatred
though.
on Twitter and stuff. Like,
Is
Crazy.
I seriously doubt it, because the fact is that stuff is just happening constantly all the time. And then news sources, of course, because all they do is hype stuff. Probably just we're like, look, here's an example of what happens when you have this kind of thing. It's kind of like everybody thought it was really hilarious when after the vote, all of a sudden there was a quote unquote spike in searches in Britain for
Right.
what is the EU, right? But it turned out that if you actually, because Google actually only shows you relative numbers, it turns out if you actually dig in and find the absolute numbers, it was on the order of thousands of searches, which is fucking tiny, right? So if you get a
Right.
spike of 1,000 more people searching for a thing, that doesn't tell you anything at all. It tells
It's a
you literally
tiny
nothing.
blip amongst tinier blips.
And even if it did, unless it was really big, you don't know who it is that's making the searches. It could be foreigners in Britain who are freaked out about like what this means for them. I mean, it could be
it could be
absolutely
the
anybody.
Queen.
It could
you
be
know?
the Queen searching 1,000 times because she's like, I'm old and can't remember.
She's been around. You've seen those pictures of her? She's been around since like I don't even know when. There's pictures of
She
her with
is-
every president of the United States from
Yeah.
now until like the maybe like the 17. I'm
I
pretty sure
think
she was
even
there
with
with George Washington. Yeah.
yeah,
and George.
she is advanced in years.
Yeah, people often forget that when we are, Independence Day is really our separation from the existing queen.
She
of
was there.
today's England. Yeah,
Yeah.
She's still upset about it. Also, apparently.
she looked awfully
Yep.
surly in pictures yesterday.
Well, aside from doing, happy explosions, 4th of July,
Happy
Independence,
Explosions Day.
America, tea throwing parties. I actually went to the Olympic trials, which I feel like is also super American.
What did you
in
learn?
America, at least.
Sam, that's super everywhereian.
Yeah,
I mean, it is super
that's
everywhere.
pretty international.
But let me explain what I mean by that, which is
Well, it's
that
adversarial.
the Americans make a big deal about this. So we went to, as in like, it's a production. So I went to the swimming Olympic trials on Saturday, and it's in this huge arena. And of course, they have the Olympic pool. I think they managed to get like 40,000 people in there, so they hype this thing up like crazy. And so it's a very high energy event. And then one of the funniest things, and it was this like super patriotic moment, is that they have these projectors and stuff in this arena that actually project onto the water. Okay.
What?
So the pool itself, this Olympic pool, basically turns into like a TV screen.
That's incredible.
It's so cool. It's ridiculous. They also have, like one of those, usually like the Jumbotron sort of, just huge TV set things. That's like a 4-sided beast, that hovers above the
Wait a
pool,
minute.
too. What?
Hold on. This is a 50-meter pool, right?
Yeah.
That's a what kind of projector do you need?
I have no idea how they did this, but it was
It's
extremely
probably
impressive.
stitched. It's probably several projectors
Yeah, it
stitched
must be.
together.
Oh, that's even crazier.
Yeah. So, but the best part of this, so they the events kind of slowly getting underway, and then it starts at like 7, and all the lights go out in the stadium, and then there's a ring light that goes around the whole stadium that like flares on with American flags, and then this is what I mean as far as like it being like such a America sort of moment over here. And then they've had this, it's like a 3-minute intro to the swimming Olympic trials where it's like this real intense music playing. There's American flags like on every surface in this stadium. Like people are covered in them. The pool is covered in them. It's just like, it was one of the most patriotic displays I think I've probably ever seen in my life.
Were there pyrotechnics?
There were. This is the craziest shit. Okay, wait. So when they would give out, and this is not during the ceremony, but when they would give out medals, and I was looking at this and trying to figure out how the hell this is happening. They had these jets of water that are shooting out from the ground. Like there's 4 of them, so 2 on each side of the medal winners, and they start off just shooting water up, right? So they're sort of slowly raising like a constant fountain thing, and then the tops of them catch on fire.
Oh my God.
And there's just fire sitting on top of a jet of water. And I'm looking at this and I'm like,
gasoline then.
But how do they get it up there? Like how do you get, because it's just shooting water up, you know?
It's hydrotechnics.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Maybe it wasn't actually fire at all. Maybe similar to their projector.
Maybe they
scheme.
projected fire on top of
it
the
was
water.
Definitely fire.
Particle effects.
Yeah, it was not the same particle effect as water.
It was probably a Pokemon that was both fire and water type.
Ooh, yeah. They just put them behind the podium.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was like an Avatar situation going on.
Yeah.
Get a waterbender, firebender just hanging out back there doing cool stuff.
Doing
High
little dance
fiving
moves. Yeah.
But yeah, that was super cool.
Well, that sounds pretty dramatic.
It was ridiculous.
Who won? Michael Phelps?
Yeah, so he was slated to be in
Spoiler.
like
When
fifth
does he
place.
not?
Well, he was supposed to lose. This thing, he was put in like 5th place in the 100-meter free fly, and he just crushed everybody. And the best part about it is, so he apparently was been kind of a sad sack for a good while, and everybody knows he's been in and out of trouble with the law and drugs and stuff. But he sort of
by
got
drugs, you just mean marijuana, right?
No, he drank a lot, and like he got pulled over for DUI where he's going like 100. Wow. Yeah, he was
So
like,
he was being a real asshat.
oh yeah. I'm not, real asshat, and endangering himself and others truly, not in the propaganda sense. And he went to rehab, and then he's got a fiance, he's got a little baby, and apparently he's just like a happy dude now, and
Good.
like sort of got over himself.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
now he's just destroying everybody, and it's hysterical. So
It kind of makes sense, though. I feel like if you were in that position where basically you have like a 15-year career at most, and you're like 10 years into it already, you'd be like, well, shit, I have no backup plan. Like if you're spent your entire life just going toward that one thing, and it's got a really close expiration date, I feel like you'd have a midlife crisis, like in your early 20s.
Because what else is he gonna do? Be like a high school swimming coach?
Yeah, he's got to learn. He's got to learn an entirely new skill set when he's done being a swimmer, and he still has his whole life ahead of him. So,
I think he's 31 now, or something like that.
yeah, I think so.
He's 31, and that actually makes him one of the oldest male Olympians, right? Because most Olympians, you don't get out of the age of 30 too much.
Most of them are only recently potty trained.
Yeah, it was so weird. And we watched some of the trials for the track stuff on ABC, and there are these huge guys who are doing like the shot put stuff.
Yeah,
right?
and they're like 5 or something.
They're like, the dude is 19, and it looks like he's like, if I had to guess his mass, it would be like 4 of myself sort of glommed together. It was this one, and he had this huge beard, and he just looked like a barbarian, like a 30-year-old beast.
You have to wonder what kind of psychological impact training like that has on your childhood. I mean, like has on you as you're training so intensely throughout your childhood.
Do you think it like spills over like onto other stuff? I feel like, it's kind of like the idea of hiring a vet, right? Like they're extremely, like they're so well disciplined or like their mental structure is so strong. Do you think it'd be the same for hiring like an Olympian, you know?
I wonder. I mean, because you put so much time and effort and energy into training and it becomes everything that you're living and breathing. And like you said, it ends at some point. It's like modeling or something where you have kind of a hard stop on when all of this training no longer is relevant unless you start teaching. And so it's, you kind of have to wonder, and also how that impacted just their growth in general, you know, having so much time being put into training, how that actually affects, you know, your ability to feel like you had a childhood and your you know, social capacity and things like that. I'm really curious to hear, you know, from people who have gone through training like that, how that's impacted them.
You mean more about like what their life is, general life is like?
How it affected them.
Yeah, we only think about how cool it is to be able to like do backflips endlessly.
Yeah, not
at
how
what
it impacts
cost?
you. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest problems with these kinds of industries where you do exactly that, where you start really young and have a very short career in that field. Most of those are sort of entertainment driven, you know, either via sports or something else. And if you're not at the very, very top of the pack where you get to make millions of dollars and then survive off of that potentially, then you're basically struggling to get by the whole time financially, and then it just ends.
Yeah.
If you ain't first, you last.
Yeah. I mean, it's like all these people going into like college sports and stuff who, for the vast majority of them, and I mean, it was rare for them to get there in the first place, and the vast majority of them have nowhere, like they don't get to go beyond that. And they put absolutely everything, every moment of their lives goes into that thing. And then at the end of their college career, that's just the end of that thing that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really hold up the winners like that. But really there's a lot more people who lost everything.
Well, this is interesting,
for
actually.
every winner.
Yeah, I mean, to bring this back to the games thing, we talk about survivorship bias in video games, right? And actually, I mean, interestingly, from that trip I went on with all the cancer survivors too, they did talk about it actually with regards to cancer survivors too, because there's always so much focus on the people who basically like crushed it, right? Who were just like, whatever, and just did their thing, and not so much obviously on the sadder stories about people who didn't. And
Yeah, well, that's where the sort of romanticized notion of all these things of, you know, battling crazy odds and horrible adversity and stuff. And there's this sort of romanticism that goes around that because of exactly that, where you focus on the people who won.
right.
And it's easy just to kind of not really pay attention to the fact that a huge number of people in all these contexts
Your
absolutely
perspective,
did not.
your perspective becomes totally skewed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that. So for me, playing Super Meat Boy, I think my sophomore year of college, and then playing Binding of Isaac shortly after that by Edmund Macmillan was the thing where I was like, oh, I could make art like this, right? Which is a joke and a half, but I didn't realize it at the time because I was so ignorant that I didn't know what I was talking about. But that was the thing that sort of put me on the path where I was like, oh, I want to do this. But then it only was, I think, you know, another year later or something when I watched that Indie Game the movie, and then I ended up reading a bunch about Ed McMillan, and he had made like 50 games before that, you know, like a bunch of just tons of Flash games. Like that was not, you know, I thought that was like a,
well, and then
like
even
his
more,
thing.
there were a mountain of literally thousands or even tens of thousands of people who were trying to do similar kind of stuff, right? With a similar kind of cartoony art style, maybe dark humor or whatever, who were doing kind of similar stuff, you know, different enough that nobody would call it the same, but all those people didn't make it.
Yeah.
Each one of them maybe only made one game. Maybe they also made 50. Who knows? But I think Indie Game the movie did the same disservice because it focused on successful, I mean, hugely successful indie titles. And it showed the kind of the struggle behind making a successful indie title.
But still a successful one.
But still a successful one.
Yeah,
Right.
not the
The
struggle.
payoff was fucking enormous for all those guys.
Right.
They all made infinite money off of their creations. And that's just not the case for almost everybody. And I think just like in sports or all of these things, when you hold those people up as the model of what you want to become, it's just horribly unrealistic and actually unfair to a lot of people, because if you don't understand actually what the risks are and what's required to get there, you become another one of those people who kind of just end up getting crushed along the way, because you'll spend years and years grinding away and in the end just don't have something to show for it.
But we found this when... Oh, sorry, good.
Oh, I was just going to say, but here's the thing. No one wants to pay money to watch a documentary about people who work their asses off and then fail miserably at the end.
Oh, it'd be
because
so
that's what
sad.
the majority of stories are, is people working really, really hard and then seeing if even any success, modest success at best.
Well, I've been thinking about this a bit because like I think the idea of survivorship bias is really interesting because to me it's actually just the fact that humans like good stories. It's more like a good story bias, right? Where good stories have a particular structure to them and they have a particular ending. It's not like a Game of Thrones situation where your favorite character just dies, like no matter what. It's supposed to be the sort of situation.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Everybody dies. But it's supposed to be the sort of situation where as far as like a good narrative is concerned, where there's a huge, like usually there's a bunch of work put in or whatever else, there's some overcoming of a problem, and then there's a change of state, at the end, and a good one, even if the cost was high.
It's all worth the struggle.
Exactly.
In the end.
And the thing is, like, I wonder if it's not even just like survivorship bias, if it's just the fact that humans love stories, and from a narrative perspective, it literally is a better story as far as stories are concerned to hear about that arc than it is to hear about the tragedy, right? The hard ones, the ones that it's not like Shakespeare.
But there's another dimension to this problem though, which is sort of gets lost in all this, which is you had mentioned that Ed McMillan had made 50 plus whatever published games online before that, right? And if you wanted to, you could think about each of those games as being a failed game, right? Because none of them took off.
Yeah, you don't now because he now has infinite money, and so you see them as his successful massive portfolio.
Right. And I think it's important to realize that, like, sure, maybe for every Ed McMillan who makes a Super Meat Boy, there's 500,000 randos who tried to make a game as well and didn't succeed.
But that doesn't try to make one game, probably.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that, like, just because that game didn't go anywhere that you can't get there eventually.
Right.
You're taking the long view.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the philosophy that we've always tried to push out there into the universe, that things usually don't work out, and that's where persistence comes in, right? You just have to keep pushing through it.
Yeah, you see so many people just looking at the Super Meat Boy, assuming that was his first game, and they quit their jobs and abandon all of their responsibilities in favor of just making their first single game that they have no experience before that. And then they're like, what? Why didn't I make any money? Why didn't it sell any copies? It's,
Telfight too.
Yeah. I mean, like, but it's a common mistake because of that perception that so many of us have. And it's, I mean, that's kind of what makes it forgivable. But at the same time, you kind of wish that it wasn't so pervasive of a mentality of like, yeah, I can live the American dream and abandon, all of my backup plans in favor of my first game idea. I mean, it's worked, in the past on occasion for certain people, but it's so rare.
Yep.
More like winning the lottery than it is like anything else.
At that point, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of improbable and ridiculous game things.
What?
We're adding controller support to Crash List.
Hey! That was a great segue, Seth.
Yeah.
So that's something that we've been saying forever that we just don't really want to do and have no plans in doing. But guess what? We're doing it, so deal with it. I don't know. What do you guys what do you want to talk about with regard to controller support?
Well,
I'm a console player, and so the controller support has been really exciting for me, especially because all I want to do is sit on my couch and play Crashlands with a controller.
Soon.
So
it's okay. So my big hesitation for hooking up doing controller support. Well, there was two things.
Wait,
one
can we just address how huge this hesitation was real quick? Because I think this is one of the
it was about 6
things.
months long.
Seth's been like, oh god, I don't want to do this controller support thing for so long, and then it's been like 3 days, 4 days of working on it full time, and it's like
it's been
amazing.
It's been 20. So I'm about 27 hours in, and I would say I'm about a quarter done.
Right. So we're talking like 4 days, right?
But originally Seth was projecting this out, and he was like, "Oh, this is going to take like a couple months. It's going to be not done until August, like late August, or who knows what."
Well, but bearing in mind that would be true given our prior studio circumstances, which was where I had about 1 hour a day to work on
when you wouldn't be able to actually
Crashlands.
work on it. Sure.
Yeah, and the rest of the time was on administrative stuff while we were trying to reorganize the studio. Now that I can actually work on it all day, it's moving along very well. But
that means you need to get it done this week, because next week you got to start training our final employee.
Yeah. So I'll have to do that. Also, this is a shortened week, so it's going to be even tougher. But yeah, the tricky thing with the controller support is I think there's two aspects to it. One is, it's meant to be a touch game or like a click game, sort of like Diablo or whatever. And all of it's not the gameplay necessarily that's challenging for controller support. It's all the UIs. Because every UI is configured a little bit differently based on the purpose of that UI. So like build mode and looking at your quests in the compendium and even Butterscotch ID, like logging in with Butterscotch ID. You can't do that with a controller yet, right? So all this stuff is really, really involved. And actually the core gameplay is done. You can now run around in the world and play the game with a controller and everything.
Is all the combat sorted out?
The combat is taken care of. It feels pretty dang good.
Yeah, it feels great.
And the other thing, and that's the other sort of dimension to it, which is I would never want to do this if we couldn't get it to feel like it was meant to be played with a controller.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it should feel like that's the way it should be.
And it does feel really good, I'll be honest.
It does.
I was shocked, actually, about how it just feels nice.
It feels like a totally different game.
Yeah.
It makes me want to just buy a Steam Link so that I can just play it on my TV.
Now, should we talk about the other thing with controllers that we've been debating?
Oh, no, not yet. We'll keep that.
I mean, we can preface
We'll stay
it.
vague.
We can preface it with like a huge, this is probably not going to happen thing.
I think just wait. Let's drop that bomb when we can.
Yeah, I would say, save that until it actually is going to happen.
All right, I'll just put a hint out there. Something.
Yeah, something
With
may or may
controllers.
not
Something
happen
maybe.
related to controller support or maybe other things.
Speculate away. Yeah.
But
And Kara,
to
what have you been working
segue-
on?
Yeah, to segue, something that is happening is my
Nice
the first
segue.
thing. I'm so good at segues. So one thing that is absolutely happening is I'm working on redesigning the butterscotchshenanigans.com website. And it's been great. It's really been amazing because first of all, when I came into the studio, I just kind of fit in immediately, and it really didn't take very long at all for me to feel like, oh yeah, this is my job, even though we still don't really know what my job entirely is composed of. I was like, yeah, this is my job. This is my job now. It's just doing this stuff.
I would say your job has a clear intent.
A clear intent, yeah.
But like what the actual sort of individual elements of it are, that's kind of up to you.
Yeah, like
right?
the day-to-day stuff we're still kind of figuring out. And so the first thing, like I come from a heavy web development background. And so the first thing, that I saw on the we'd like to do this list was website. I was like, oh, hell yeah, I know how to do that. And so I just kind of dove in and started making some really rad designs, and we've got some really good ideas, and I get to start development next week or this week. This week. Tomorrow.
And it's
I get to start development tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, but what will happen with that thing is we're actually going to try to shift all the stuff to bscotch.net instead of the untypable butterscotch-shenanigans.com.
Yeah.
But yeah, the site's looking
a
really
wise
cool.
move.
Carol's trying to get all the stuff that we have horribly scattered across the internet into one more coherent place. So it's gonna be real cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you who maybe used to come to our website fairly often, but have stopped because we've stopped putting so much content on it, we're trying to address the problem of our website is primarily a blog, right? Like it's in blog form. And that means that anytime we post information, it buries all the previous information, which that's kind of the main problem that Carol's trying to address. That way we actually have more of an incentive on our end to put cool stuff on there.
Yep.
Because it won't get
Yeah,
buried.
because it literally has been the case that we would one week be like, "Ooh, we should put something out." Be like, "Oh, but we have to put up the thing about our podcast episode on Wednesday." We probably want to have that sit there for a few days. That means we can't post a thing until Friday. But then some other thing, it just became this stupid discourse about trying to figure out when we were allowed to post things instead of just being able to do it whenever we wanted to.
Now we're just going to post stuff. And we're also coming up with all kinds of cool ideas about Easter eggs. Yeah. And weird stuff to pepper the website with. So if anybody has ideas, shoot us a note. But otherwise, just enjoy clicking around on the website and trying to figure out what all we put in there in order to surprise and delight you.
Now, by Easter, I assume you mean that one Sunday in April.
Yeah.
There'll be literal
Happy
Easter
April.
eggs just laying around the website.
Yeah.
If you find them, you get a prize.
Taking a lot of inspiration from Stardew Valley on that one.
Are there actual Easter eggs in it?
Well, there's an Easter festival. Where
Oh,
you have
yeah.
to go
I
on
remember
an
I played
Easter
that
egg
and I
hunt.
was like, I'm crushing everybody. And then I got second place behind a child.
What? You lost?
I lost to the child.
Child Sam?
The AI child destroyed me.
I was going to say, to be
train
fair,
every year to maximize their egg picking
Yeah,
up
but
skills.
my legs are so much longer. My
Yeah, but it was a
aggressive
robot. Yeah, that's
it was a
true.
robot child.
Yeah,
I
robot
crushed
child.
that Easter egg hunt.
Man, I got
I
crushed
haven't-
by it.
I haven't played Stardew Valley yet, but I plan to. Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up?
It's question time.
It is.
It's question time.
Let's take some questions. These questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. They are asked by members of the Butterscotch Shenanigans community,
And
as well as
randos.
just anonymous randos. So take it away, Sam. Let's get some questions.
So first question comes from Alan MB, and I'm going
That's
to
short
generalize
for medical doctor.
it. He's got a degree. Don't mess with him.
He's
He's got a
degree.
he's got a degree.
He's got a degree in medicine.
The question is, I've got an older bro by 6 years, so there's always been a feeling of competition. Which, by the way, like a 6-year gap, I feel like in siblinghood, which is what we're going to dive into here. That's a big one. Mm-hmm. You know, that's like 3 developmental stages when you're young. So the question is, do any of you ever get that competitive spirit, feeling like you need to push yourself to be better than your siblings? And do you have any specific stories about it?
Sam, you could probably, of the 3 of us bros, you could probably answer this the most.
I probably can. I'm going to answer it better than you ever could. So I'm 3 years behind. Well, 3/4 years behind Adam and Seth, and that's been interesting because it's a one full sort of developmental stage behind when you're growing up, right? So
School wise.
yeah, and so when they were 10, I was 6 or 7, and the size difference, between a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old is huge, and then it gets even worse when someone's like 10 and someone else is 14, right? So you're always
14 and 18 even.
yeah, so you're always behind enough. Like that, a 4-year gap seems like it's one full like development period,
Yeah.
And it's enough that I think so. I always there's 2 things that came out of the fact that Adam and Seth were older than me. One is that I used to get beaten up frequently because, and I think I will say I think justly because I was kind of a douchebag.
When it wasn't like, and it also wasn't horribly beaten up or anything. It wasn't.
No.
Like,
It was just
it
like,
wasn't like
yo,
Some
Pound
occasional
Town.
whoopings.
It was like the occasional smack.
yeah, it wasn't. I didn't get any like bloodied eyes or like it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't brutal stuff. It was just like I'd be being an ass face about something, and then Adam would just punch me with force in the chest, and I'd go flying across the room and be like,
In the Avengers.
yeah,
or the Matrix.
Yeah.
right. So, that was good in a lot of ways because it sort of like our parents didn't hit us, so but my brothers did. So that
somebody
was
had
nice.
to.
Somebody had to. I mean, I feel like for some kids, like if you're just being a little shit, like having your brother, because it's not a parent. I just think it's important, like, but having your brother just punch you super hard and not in a way that like causes any bruising or damage, but just like
just the win completely.
yeah, it's
leaves
just
you.
shocking,
Yeah.
It's just shocking. And so that was good for me.
It's
I
like in
concur with
TV
that.
shows when someone just like can't stop like freaking out and then somebody slaps them in the face and they're like,
Yeah, they're like, okay. They're like,
I
cool,
got it.
thank you for that hard reset. But yeah, so I appreciated that element of it.
to
And-
be
maybe
clear,
now
we're
you
not
do.
advocating punching your siblings.
yeah, maybe
Well-
but so
As a disclaimer, you shouldn't listen to us when we advocate for punching your siblings.
Anything.
anything really. But yeah, so the other thing that gave me though is that, and this is something that I think is like a core part of who I am now, is that having to be around 2 people who were much larger than me and felt free to punch me for reasons, made it so that I had to pay very close attention to their emotional states to make sure that I was, doing the right thing so that I wouldn't be, I wouldn't fall into some trap where I would get punched or something like that. And so as a result, like I feel like my people skills are really, really good. I think primarily because I had to dodge these giants and parlay with their crazed teenage emotional states.
Well, and it
while I
was even
growing.
worse because I was an early puber and Sam was
Adam was-
a late puber.
Adam was huge.
Yeah, Adam. Yeah. I think I was 90 pounds coming into high school, and Adam
I was 150 already.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and actually, weirdly,
I haven't grown since like 9th grade, basically.
So I developed. It's like I was definitely a dick towards Sam. I think until that point at which Adam suddenly was a monster to me, and then I was a monster to Sam, and then it gave me some perspective about having a hormonal raging giant stampeding around the house, smashing everybody.
Yes, if only we all could experience it. Be so lucky. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I went through those things, which I think was good. And I think the one thing that kind of pushed me personally to try to do better than Adam and Seth did was weirdly, like, they actually helped a lot. So one day Adam came home he's taking calc at the college level in high school. So I was in, I think, 7th grade, maybe. And Adam, I think you were in 11th grade or something like that. And Adam came home and he was like, "Hey, Sam, I'm going to teach you some calculus." And I was like, no, you're not. And he was like, "Sit the fuck down. You're going to learn some calculus." And so he just...
Or you're going to get punched.
So he just forcibly taught me some calculus at the dinner table in 7th grade. And I was like, this is pretty cool, actually. And then once I started enjoying it, of course, he left, because that's what you do as an older sibling. He's like, "Well, this is no fun anymore because I'm not torturing you." And that helped a lot. And so I think it was weird because actually just being around them, the fact that they were bigger and more mature and just smarter constantly sort of made it so that I had to try to be more like that in order to not, get beaten in a lot of ways, but also just to sort of fit with them as a trio. So I don't think I ever really had any competitive, if that makes sense. There was no competitive element. It was more just like I wanted to blend in more so, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can feel that as the youngest of 3 also. My siblings were 3 years and 6 years ahead of me. And yeah, it was, I wound up, my resulting personality is sort of a blend between the two of them based on observation and, having to, like you said, kind of gauge their emotional states and gauge their, their intellectual fortes and kind of feed off of that and then kind of take that on my own. It's really, really interesting. And it means that I get along with both of them better than they get along with each other, I think, because I have taken on elements of both of them throughout aging. And I think there was some levels of competition, but they were so much older than me that it was more just trying to prove that I was worth hanging out with.
Right. Oh yeah. I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me as the oldest sibling, I never felt competition because I was always so busy doing the next thing.
Because I was always so much better than everybody else.
I know. It's by the time you guys were doing something that I had done, I'd already been doing it for a while, right? And because of the way that education is structured, you just do a thing for a year maximum, right? So by the time I did a thing and finished it, that's when one of the two of you maybe were getting started with that thing. And that was true almost throughout, right? But we also chose a lot of different stuff going through. So there was never a moment where I had to do something that one of you had already done and done well, because I just had already done it. And whether it was good or not was irrelevant because it was done in my past now and I was on to the next thing. And so I never...
You were setting the bar.
Yeah, basically I just went through and I was doing bar setting basically and path blazing, right? And I was my preoccupation was going to college, going to high school, all those big steps. I didn't have anybody to watch go through that first, and so I just had to be nervous about that thing and then go do it and hope for the best. And that was it. So competition was never a thing I had to worry about. For me, it was always how the fuck do I do the next thing, right? Because there was. The only people around me doing it were my friends doing it at the same time.
Right.
From an outside perspective, I can comment on your brotherly collaboration as opposed to competition. Even just playing Rocket League with the 3 of you guys is really interesting in that there's the standard kind of air of competition of gameplay, there doesn't feel like there's this unnecessary sibling rivalry whenever we're playing, which I think is really interesting because I get super intense when I play games, especially when I play games with my siblings. But you guys just kind of you just play, and you acknowledge each other's skills and maybe downfalls.
Yeah, well, we laugh at each other's fuck ups, but in not in a mean way. You know?
Yeah, and it's really heartening. You know, it's a really, really cool thing to see because I think you have a really unique sibling relationship and that you do get along really well.
But
now.
I think a lot of this comes from building the studio together.
That could very well be.
Because
we wouldn't have been able to do that had this foundation.
True, yeah. I mean, the foundation was there, but I think it's something that we've all worked on really hard throughout the development of the studio because we work with each other full time, and even when we're interacting a lot. I mean, we are the main people we interact with, period, and we had to just be very attentive about that kind of stuff. I think the biggest thing, though, is just that the framing we took on the problem was that this is a 100% collaborative problem. Like, competition didn't have a place in it. It didn't even make sense as a thing.
Well, competition is not just about winning,
it's
but it's about the other person losing. Yeah. Which that doesn't work if you're trying to work as a team to do something. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, here's my question, because so all of us then, so Adam was the first one, firstborn, so he got to go blaze some trails, and Carol and I both are in the same place where we were at least one full basically development cycle behind everybody. Mm-hmm. But Seth, you're a year behind Adam.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about that because you're not far enough away where you can be like, well, I'm just not developed enough.
It put me into a couple interesting situations. I think it was that I was close enough to Adam that I could sort of intellectually do the same stuff that he was doing, but there was also a long period of time where he was just really, really big compared to me.
He was a monster. This is true.
Yeah, I never had a growth spurt or anything like that. I just grew a steady.
Yeah, you just steadily grew.
I grew 2 inches per year.
Sam and I both had
10
growth
years.
spurts, but they were 8 years apart nearly.
Yeah, so coming into high school, I was 90 pounds, and coming out of high school, I was 160 pounds. But there was no spike. It was just, I just became slowly larger. So there was that kind of point where I played football and stuff to kind of emulate what Adam was doing. But there was kind of a breaking point where I signed up for swimming, where physical sort of what would you call it? Your massiveness,
size,
your mass doesn't help you really in swimming. It's a lot of technique and stuff. And I signed up for the swim team my freshman year, and all of a sudden there was a thing that I could do really well that Adam just was kind of bad at, right?
Kind of bad. I was terrible.
And Adam signed up for the swim team as well because we had one car between the two of us,
Ford Ranger,
and we had a 98 Ford Ranger pickup truck,
which I destroyed shortly after they left.
Oh
for
no!
college.
And Sam crushed it. Literally crushed the truck. But swimming was at 6:00 in the morning in the dead of winter through the cold winter months.
The best time to be wet.
Oh my God!
And
yes.
so we had to get up at about 5:15 in the morning, go swim for 3,000 yards, and then at 7:00 we'd be done, and then go to school. And Adam didn't want to ride the bus, so he signed up for swimming and put himself through all this so that he wouldn't have to be that sophomore who was riding the bus, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's really important
with all the little kids, right? And so he signed up for swimming, but he didn't really want to do it. And I think just like that was kind of a liberating moment for me of doing this thing that that nobody else before me had decided to do, and that I was good at, and that also I somehow managed to set the terms of who gets the car, who gets the train. All of a sudden I was in charge of that entire season, and Adam just had to follow along. So, I don't know. It never really felt competitive for me, but there was definitely a moment at which I realized that I could just decide to do stuff that hadn't been sort of trailblazed ahead.
You were an independent man, and you didn't need no older brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's an interesting piece of psych too that I just want to drop in here, which is this concept of sibling differentiation, which is basically just the idea that as siblings, you understand intuitively that parents can only love the person who's best at a thing. And so you actually have to, and this is totally true. If you look at twins, identical twins, for example, is one of the most fun ones because, of course, they're the same for the most part. But they oftentimes will end up having completely different interests from one another. And this is driven largely by this concept of sibling differentiation, which is essentially saying in order for me to have, value to my parents and my family, I need to not be potentially in second place with regards to inactivity.
So you take an orthogonal path.
Yeah, which also explains, Seth, why you suddenly felt like freaking awesome when you got to choose to do swimming, which Adam had never even touched before. And then, of course, the fact that you crushed him at it was bonus material.
It's just a little cherry on top.
Yeah. And I think I was far enough behind you guys that it didn't quite matter so much as far as like what I chose to do, because people kind of like, it was like 3 or 4 years, It's long enough that they remembered you guys, but it wasn't so close that they were like, oh, you gotta be just like Seth. He was so good at drawing, in school. You better get on that. No one ever said that shit.
Well, people wouldn't phrase it that way, but there would be an expectation.
Oh yeah.
Right. That like, I don't know if Carol, you had the same kind of experience where like your siblings went ahead of you, and if you had the same teacher as them or something, then they would kind of anticipate that you would be as good or similar, with your interests and skills and everything.
Yeah, we were far enough apart that didn't happen often, but when it did, usually with gym teachers, like I was miserable at athletics and my sister was pretty good. And so the gym teachers were always especially disappointed that I couldn't get the ball inside the thing.
Honestly, what is the deal with gym class teaching you how to do all these team sports? Like, shouldn't it be the goal be to sort of like teach you how to be a healthy, fit person?
No,
I think they try to mix it in. I mean, like, because there's that collaboration, like team building, teaching you how to collaborate with your fellow students, but also teaching you how to live a healthy lifestyle. But I don't think it really worked very well.
Yeah, for us, it was almost entirely like, this is our volleyball segment, and we're just gonna play volleyball for like 6 months.
I got a B in volleyball because I couldn't direct where to put the ball on the other side of the net when I served.
Sam, you also got a D in jogging.
Yeah, because I was, and this is completely true, because I was in swimming at the time. My resting heart rate, which has always been low, was 40 beats a minute.
He was basically a turtle.
I was basically a turtle, and we had to wear these really weird contraptions. It was kind of like a plastic bra strap, essentially, that went around your whole body, and it was a heart rate monitor. And they wanted to do this basically, quantitatively, and you had to get in your quote unquote heart rate zone, which was the same for everybody. They just prescribed everybody's heart rate zone.
It was like, you got to have your heart rate at 170.
It was 120 to 180 was the zone, which of course, if your resting heart rate is 40,
you got to triple it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to just sprint in circles for 40 minutes in order to hit my, 20 minutes in my zone or whatever. And yeah, I was getting a D in this class, and I went up to the teacher and I was like, hey, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But you've seen me sprinting in circles and I'm getting a D, and that guy's like walking and he's crushing it, and like, what, can you not do this? And he's like, what? He's like, it's because you're not doing the circuit. You need to do the circuit. Got to go do your push-ups. And I was like, when I do push-ups, my heart rate goes down. I don't know if you understand.
Down from where it is when you're sprinting.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, yes, it does. And I have the fucking data now sitting on my body to show you. And so I went and did some sit-ups, came back, and my heart rate was at like 60. And he was like, oh.
I don't understand this.
It was amazing.
It's what's amazing to me is that they were grading you on individual sports and your ability to do those things. Like, I feel like I was always graded on just effort and participation for that sort of thing, because everybody has different abilities and different body types, and
gym class was weirdly tyrannical.
Yeah, that seems really unhealthy. I mean, as far as psychologically for the students,
it's probably what drove my hate for all sports.
Yeah, well, likewise. I remember we were doing like a basketball thing once, and it was like, I was a short kid. I was a really, really small person. And so when it was my turn, I was already panicking, and they made you shoot hoops until you got one. And so you had to be the only person in front of the entire class shooting hoops until you got one. And I was doing it forever. I'd probably shot 20 or 30 times, and I just started crying in the middle of the basketball court.
Because sounds like my style as well of basketball.
Like, I was getting worse and worse because I was getting more and more just like worked up, and felt like I'm on the spot. There's no way that I can do this. I haven't had the training or experience to do this. Everybody's watching me fail, and there's no way out of it. And so I just broke down. And that was just one of the most traumatic moments. That was when I was like, I'm never trying sports sports.
That was probably
this
a
has
fair
ruined
response.
sports.
Yeah, when I
Carol,
was
okay.
when I was in football, which I did because all my friends were doing it, and you weren't cool unless you were in football, so I had to.
Well, of course.
Because high school. So
You had to.
But I mean, I hated it every moment of the way, and most of it was because I didn't care about sports anyway. Like I didn't care about competing with people, and so I couldn't get like the anger drive you need to crush human skulls as a football player and all that stuff. So I just like kind of played, and when I first started, I was one of the biggest people, and so it just like was easy. I just kind of had to stand around, and it was fine. But then I became one of the smallest because everybody else started to actually grow, and so it became like increasingly horrible. But it kind of culminated in this problem, which was my eyeballs didn't look straight, right? But it was kind of a subtle thing. So it was basically anytime I wasn't really paying attention or drifting off or something, my left eye would kind of just drift in and I would be cross-eyed. And as a consequence, I had horrible, horrible depth perception. And I couldn't catch balls because that requires pretty good depth perception and then hand-eye coordination afterwards. So I always did stuff in football that didn't require doing ball stuff.
So you were a
So
lineman.
I was always a lineman. And so this kind of all came to head because in football, it's a group punishment activity, right? So anytime one individual fucks up, everybody on the team is punished. So that's kind of the system that we were in. So for us, we would do and it was drill all day, every day. And anytime somebody fucked up a drill, everybody had to do push-ups or sit-ups or something. And so for me, there was this particular drill we had to do that required basically kind of doing this like zigzaggy run thing and catching a ball as you were doing it. And
regardless of whether you ever would need to catch a ball.
And so without fail, I didn't catch the ball every time that we did this thing. And they implemented this new punishment system where every person in a row who missed would double the number of push-ups that had to be done.
Oh,
as a punishment.
God.
Oh God.
And so I was on the.
Do they not understand how compound interest works?
So I was on the tail end of this thing, and of course, and when I came up, everybody knew I was going to miss. Because I always did.
Oh, no.
And I always had to do it anyway. And so there's just this collective groan as I go up to do it. And I'm like, well, this is just how my life is right now. You know? and that was basically my football experience I ended up quitting mid-season my junior year because it was just enough at that point, you know.
And you were a hardcore swimmer at that point.
I was a
Crushing
hardcore
it.
bad swimmer at that point.
I think my horror story is basically the same as Carol's, but with something that actually required way less skill, which was the act of skipping is what we were learning how to do. And I couldn't get it figured out. This is in third grade.
Oh no.
I could not. I could not figure it out because it's a weird.
Do leg work.
Skipping is actually a really weird leg thing.
It is.
Like,
It's true.
it's super weird. It's not walking. It's not running. It's like a sort of weird jostling.
It's
like-
kind of a dance. It's a
It's
run
kind of a
dance.
dance.
Alternating double hops.
It's a run dance, and we were all skipping, and you'd skip from this line to this other line, and back again, and I was clearly just like kind of just flopping around, locomoting in a really weird way, and the teacher saw this, and so stopped the entire class. It's like 40 kids.
Oh no!
Because it's like you could handle that many young kids, you know, and everybody's lined up, and then she takes me out and makes me hold her hand and skip with her back and forth, which I can't do. It's not like I need to practice the act more. I don't understand how to skip yet. So she's holding my hand while I just sort of like flop around like some weird, broken-legged deer on her side, and she's just like dragging me around. It did this for like 10 minutes while everyone else, and these are third graders, like no one's interested in, they don't have the attention span for that sort of weight. So I'm just being completely tortured by this.
I never heard this story.
I hated that
Sad.
teacher so much. I
bet.
didn't understand. I was like, how could you not see that this is the worst way to solve this learning challenge that I have? Like, let's put you in front of all your friends and make you hold my hand.
It should have just been like a see me after class.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna skip together.
We're gonna skip. Let's go skip.
Yeah. That would have been nice, but it didn't happen.
It's amazing how much specific teachers can just kind of like fuck your path,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it
I think
is.
we all probably got plenty more stories about that. But some other time. Let's move.
And not to knock teachers, because of course some of them put you on a really good path. So just to,
Yes.
to be clear.
It's the same thing with any human. They're great and terrible at the same time.
Yep. Should we try
All right,
to
so next
blow
question.
through some of these questions? Because we're...
Yeah. Next question comes from Pixel and Bracket, who asks, can we hear some about the new studio space?
It's cool.
It's great. Oh, cool.
Also
Yeah,
great.
so the studio space is my basement. My wife and I just moved to our first house, and we specifically tried to find a house that had enough room in the basement that we could turn it into Butterscotch HQ, because we don't want to have to go get a company office and do all that stuff. We still want to kind of keep it as small as possible, right? So we just painted the basement to be Butterscotch colors. So we have the kind of fuchsia and yellowish gold colors on the wall. We have a stenciled Butterscotch Shenanigans sort of company logo going up the side of the stairs, which is super cool.
I think Carol sent a picture of that, right? On Twitter?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can see that on
there's-
Instagram.
Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Instagram.com/butterscotch.shenanigans.
Yes, follow
Or
us.
Twitter, whatever the fuck, /BScottShenany.
I
think you were looking for
.com.
.com. I think that's what you
Is there
were
like,
looking
but is there
for.
like a /user in there or something, or what are they?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Nope.
Then that's
then-
exactly what I was looking for.
Twitter,
the part-
whatever the fuck.
The part that I'm the most excited about, but also the most worried about, is we're all very accustomed to having whiteboard walls, and in the past we've just used adhesive whiteboard sticker things that you can just stick onto the wall and then you can write on it. But when I had the painter down here working on stuff, I made this comment. I was like, when can I stick the adhesive onto the paint, right? Or like, how long do I have to wait for it to dry? And he goes, I bet I could get some of that whiteboard paint. And so we sort of crunched out the numbers on it, and it turns out that in terms of square footage, the paint is substantially cheaper than the adhesives.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh, okay, so for the same price, we could basically cover the whole office in whiteboard instead of just two sections of the wall, right? So he went through and painted it, and it looks amazing, but so like you have to do a coat of white and then a coat of this sort of clear dry erase goo substance. And then you got to do a second coat of that. But my worry is that because it's clear, the dry erase stuff is clear, that it's really hard to tell where you have applied it. You have to kind of like look around and try to look for the shine of the wall, And if there's a spot that's missed, we're going to be writing on this wall, and then all of a sudden it's just going to be like marker on paint. Just boom. And then that's not coming off. So we get to try it out for the first time tomorrow.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it has to dry for a week, and I'm kind of
Scared?
nervous. I'm nervous about it, but
Got some jitters?
Not as nervous as that gnat that got stuck in it.
a gnat died in our
He
whiteboard.
died so that we can live.
It
So
was
that we
just
could-
like Jurassic Park. He just got embedded into the goop.
Well, it was like Jurassic Park until Carol scraped it off, and then its legs were remaining stuck inside.
I thought he maybe was still alive. I was like, "Come on, little buddy!" And then his
then
torso just fell off entirely.
Now,
and
he
his
was
legs
dead.
were embedded in the enamel goop, whatever it is.
Come on, little butter guy.
I felt so bad.
But yeah, it's also, I don't know if you guys want to comment on. So this is the first time that we've actually had a dedicated space like this. We've been Adam was remote in Texas. Sam and I were in our apartments. Carol has worked in a dedicated office space in the past, but we have not. And it's definitely got an interesting it changes the way we work.
I don't really work at home anymore, which is
Yeah. There's such
weird.
a clearer delineation between, when you're at work and when you're not at work.
It's great.
Right?
It's probably healthier, I
Yep.
would wager.
Probably. Yeah.
All right.
It's been good, though.
Next question, and we'll do these kind of rapid fire. We'll get a few of them out of the way. Tofos asks/says Crashlands was on sale, which the sale finished yesterday. How did that happen?
Can
Which
we
is an interesting phrase.
say anything about how it happened?
We're in
I
this
think-
summer sale. I mean,
Yeah, I think all we can say is just we intended to put it on sale at some point, and just because the summer sale came up, we decided to jump on the opopportunity.
so that's how that happened.
We logged
Yeah.
into Steam and we told it to discount the game.
Do the thing. Yeah.
Although interestingly, we put it on sale for 20%. Our original plan was maybe 10%, but we kind of decided that was
Lame.
not really a sale. But I don't think we ever really plan on making it bigger than, say, like a 33% sale.
That is still the plan. But, who knows what's going to happen in the future.
That's the current plan. But yeah, I don't know. Something about, there's something feels weird and wrong maybe about buying a game that, if you're like, let's say you buy some AAA title or something that took a team of 500 people 5 years to make, and then you just wait long enough and you buy it for $1.
Yeah.
It just feels weird.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that
it's
should
just
be allowed.
It's too low. So, which isn't to say that's what Crashlands is.
No, because that was a team of 2.5 people for 2 years.
Yeah. But still.
I'm a half person in this context, just to be clear. Come on.
But a wee babe.
All right. Next question, which is a super easy softball for you guys, comes from Alan Falcon. To what extent do we possess free will?
We don't have time to discuss this probably, so I'm going to go with 0%.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
It depends on if we're in just like a virtual reality of someone else, and also whether or not we actually exist within like the dimension multiplicity thing that Stephen Hawking talks
Also
about.
true.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great point.
That's a great point, Carol.
And I want to amend also my 0% to also add that, yes, it is 0%. We don't actually have free will. But on the other hand, it seems like we do, so who gives a fuck?
Yep.
I like that. That's nice. I'm going to go with we do sometimes, but not most of the time.
Not when other people influence us.
Which is all the time.
Which is all the time. So yeah, that's my vote. Like when you're not in the middle of an activity, I feel like you could be like, I'm gonna go plan about this, or I'm gonna change the way I do stuff, or whatever else. But if you're just doing the thing, if you're just caught up in your habits or whatever, you're kind of just doing.
Well, I think
things.
the thing about free will is as you try to define it, no matter what definition you come up with, it either becomes meaningless as a concept or something you definitely don't have.
So you're saying the question in and of itself
Is effectively meaningless.
Is
makes
what
the
even
answer-
is free will?
Forces the answer to be false. Well, it's just like, it's a thing that, again, like kind of like naively and romantically, we want to believe that we are in full control of everything we do. But the thing is, that doesn't mean anything. It just literally
Really, we're
means
just
nothing.
in a really advanced computer simulation.
But even if
that's
we
all.
weren't,
Yeah.
though, it still wouldn't mean anything.
Well, yeah, but you have to operate. You operate in a system.
Yeah, you don't
with
operate in a
rules.
vacuum. If you operated in a vacuum, you'd be dead.
So,
But
for
you would have free
example-
will before you died.
For example, you cannot choose to ignore gravity.
Correct.
There are constraints upon you that you simply have
That
to.
are
Or maybe you
outside of
can,
your
and you haven't
control.
embraced the reality of the Matrix good enough. you
Well,
know?
that's basically what the theme of the Matrix is.
But
right?
even
Yeah,
still,
there's
like,
totally-
all those
You have to
things,
free
though,
your
but even when he
mind.
does, he only frees it. He frees it to then choose whether or not to interact with obstacles that exist in his path in a less constrained way. But the constraint still is that there are obstacles in his path. He has to choose what to do with.
But it's
You
fair to
just
say.
move where the freedom part is upstream a little bit, but then there's still.
But if it's possible to move along that spectrum, then in theory you could reach the end.
no, I mean,
But it would just
Why,
make
though?
for a really shitty movie if Neo was just like, "Oh, I guess I'm just gonna be like Code now," and then you never saw him do anything, and everybody just.
But
died.
then at that point, you create your own constraints because now you'll be like, if you become a god of a universe that doesn't yet exist, and you set down a whole bunch of rules, and now you have to operate within the rules you set down.
Do you though?
unless
you
you
don't.
define
I
the
think you
rules
do.
not to apply to you.
Yeah.
So does that mean that when we're building video games, we have complete free will?
No, we don't, because we're operating within the confines of what the software allows us to do, and within what our own life experiences allows us to even conceive of.
Well, it's
And-
the idea that operating within constraints is not having free
See,
will,
that's
which I
exactly
don't think
right.
is necessarily true.
That's
That's the
exactly
problem.
right. You can't actually
I see what
define
you're
it
saying.
in a meaningful way
Well,
without
here's-
taking freedom out of it, because free as a word is just meaningless. It doesn't fucking mean
Here's
anything.
That
the
sounds
one-
pretty un-American, Adam. For
Yeah.
our 4th of July
Well, here's the thing:
podcast.
freedom cost $1.05.
That's true.
Buy one, get one free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free one,
a
get
good one.
one free. Buy.
Buy.
$1.05.
I think my favorite psych study that rolls into this is the one that shows that before you lift your hand to do something, there's a there's a chain of mental activity going on that is about to tell you to lift your hand, which means that your brain already decided to lift your hand before you're consciously aware of the fact that you're about to lift your hand.
Yeah, and then your conscious mind
what
tries
is
to
that?
decide why you did that after the fact, and is really good
It
at
just makes
making
up an
shit
answer.
up.
Oh yeah.
I'm lifting my hand right now. It's weird.
Well, you're not lifting your hand, Carol.
Yeah.
Is your hand lifting you?
Oh my god.
Your hand just decided to lift, and then you as a third, because you're effectively a third-party observer to what your body does.
That's true.
If anybody's
So
interested
does
in this,
that mean that Michael Phelps shouldn't get any credit for winning? the
Exactly,
Olympic
his
trials?
body should.
He's like,
body
well,
should?
Michael Phelps has
is-
done excellently in this race.
his brain keeps trying to get drunk and do weed and all this other shit, but his body is trying to be an Olympic swimmer. So
that's an interesting idea. If anybody's interested in this, if you YouTube split brain patients, you'll see some other stuff about this that ends up being really confusing as far as this whole idea of free will and who's in charge and what exactly it is that what you call yourself is doing.
Yeah, we're just
most of the time.
organic automatons with
yeah.
with these little like third-party observers on top who are just trying to figure out what the fuck's going on with this robot it's riding on.
Yeah, basically they just make stories.
Yeah, they
go
just
tying it
invent
back
stuff.
to that first part. We're just making stories constantly.
And it probably just evolved as a tool for us to socialize with each other, and then it kind of got out of hand.
Got a little out of control.
what if that part of your brain is actually just a parasite that lives on the robot?
It basically is.
The prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
You are just a parasite on your body, fucking up its desire to do cool things like win Olympic races.
Okay, well, I think that's all we got for today. That's a good place to end.
Yeah.
An existential crisis. Let's
Deep
do that.
conversation for a Tuesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that'll be it for Coffee with Butterscotch for this week. So hope you guys had a happy Independence
For
Day.
those of you who are Americans.
Yeah.
And if you aren't, just happy 4th of July.
Yeah. And hopefully nobody lost any digits or anything, from all the ordnance that was exploded. And we will see you guys next
And
week.
remember to go to podcast.bscotch.net for the podcast and stuff.
And for questions.
And questions.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.